Thank you, Justin. I was walking up here, I could hear all my CBD bottles rattling in my pocket here. Believe it or not, people talked about more people using it for medicine, and the elders, whenever I hit the road, they say, "Hey, Onigan, can you get me some more CBD oil?" So I buy all kinds of CBD oil I got to take home back to Opaskwayak because we sell out so fast in our retail operation. But with that, we're going to get right into the presentation here. Meta growth. Just to give you a little bit of background, when Opaskwayak got into it, I know a lot of First Nations are still talking about sovereignty and how do we protect our interests. And we saw that, but if we would have waited for the federal government to come up with the policy, and they did, and of course they forgot us, we'd still be waiting 2 years later, which most of us are. But in our case, we said, let's see how we can figure this process out for ourselves. So Meta Growth is our retail operation, and it's a national Indigenous retail opportunity as well, and that's growing. Opaskwayak Cree Nation and Meta Cannabis Retail. Is it possible to turn that TV this way, or do I have a mic and I can go this way? Can you turn it? Oh, there we go. Yeah, we'll go like that. Okay, the Opaskwayak Cree Nation is one of the largest shareholders of Meta Growth, and when I got elected, like I told you, we were just about $4 million in debt and analyzed our financial situation, so we really had to do some fast thinking. So this is when I had met with Frank Bush, who's sitting in the crowd over there, and he's working for First Nations Financial Authority. We figured out pretty quick that if we became certified with that, then we would be able to generate every dollar we make into 10 to 12 times as much new dollars, which is what we did. So we basically consolidated all of our high interest debt anywhere from 6 to 10% amortized over 6 to 10 years, and had to have some collateral. With FNFA, you can borrow up to 30 years, no collateral, and low interest rates. So as I said earlier, and you'll see it in my presentation, being able to borrow at 2.75% and lending to companies at anywhere from 12 to 22%. So we've learned how to play the financial game. We own the Meta store in the Otunike Mall and is operated by Meta Growth. So when we bought into the company, as I said earlier in conversation, attending conferences, we asked the CEOs there of the LPs where would the future would be, and it was in retail, because ultimately you could all be retailers or licensed producers, but as a retailer, and there's only a few of them, will determine which products we buy from the best genetics in the country or the products. So with the investment, we made a $3 million investment. Originally, they were asking for 6, but they sold out that 6, so I was able to negotiate and get $3 million opened up for us, which they agreed to. And the gentleman at the time that was presenting was a senior RCMP officer, the most senior anti-drug enforcement officer in Canada. So while he was phoning, I said, "Do you happen to know Chuck Rafici?" He stops and smiles and says, "How do you know Chuck?" I said, "I don't, I only know of him, but Chuck is the gentleman that basically pushed and lobbied to get cannabis legalized in Canada, and is the founder of Canopy, a co-founder, which is one of the biggest companies in the world today." So he was the chairman of the board at the time, and as I said in previous presentations, it was like serendipity to be able to partner with one of the founders or the people that helped legalize cannabis in Canada. And he's also a good friend. So with the investment at the time, we didn't know it, but we became the largest private shareholder of a publicly traded company in Canada at $3 million, just over 12 million shares. So with that, we also got a seat on the board, and we make that a priority whenever we do negotiate investments with companies. So this became the first legal recreational cannabis store on First Nations land in Canada. We opened in early November when it was legalized last year. Our store is located in the Otunike Mall on the First Nation. So we get a lease from the company that pays our development corporation. We employ roughly a dozen people in there. We own 51% of it because it's on the First Nation, and then because we're 10% owners, we're basically benefiting 4 times. So we view the investment as an economic breakthrough for the future of the community, and has allowed us now to become a strategic shareholder of other publicly traded companies. So with the retail partnerships, we've been building with First Nations development and growth. We have 4 Meta stores owned by First Nations in northern Manitoba. One of them, of course, is on our community, on the Opaskwayak Cree Nation, 6 hours north of Winnipeg. The Nisitsweyastik Cree Nation, which is located in Thompson, Manitoba, on an urban reserve. And then the Long Plain First Nation that has a store on their urban reserve in Winnipeg, right by the largest retail location in Winnipeg, and then one in their other urban reserve in Portage La Prairie, Manitoba. And the way we did this, as was stated earlier, when the federal government said they would legalize cannabis and ensure First Nations were part of it, of course, they forgot to consult us in the process. So what we did is, knowing that there was no, words were falling on deaf ears, we were lobbying with the federal government 2.5 years ago already, pushing to get a set-aside for First Nations. We were actually even pushing to get cannabis put on the formulary with FNIHB for medicinal purposes. That's how far we were thinking ahead. So as we moved forward, we said, well, we better start lobbying with the provincial government because the feds aren't going to do it. So we went and started working with the provincial government of Manitoba, and we were successful in ensuring that they had at least 10% of the points go towards winners of the 4 master licenses. So this is us here at the Atunike Mall of the grand opening of the retail location. So we had our elders who gave us their full support. As someone said earlier, a lot of people were using cannabis for medicinal purposes and have been for many years. It's just the fact that it became legal now. They were slowly coming out of their shadows to say, yeah, my family uses it for this, for diabetes, cannabis, lupus, etc. So when we asked for their support, they gave it to us, and we took it to council and passed unanimously. So this is my vice chief beside me there, Jennifer Flett, the grand opening. Our elder, our CEO there, the gentleman on my left, your right, Mark Gallagher, and our CEO of our corporation, Ginger Martin. And then the very first customer who bought 10 pounds of cannabis. No, just kidding. You're allowed to buy up to 30 grams in Manitoba, so I don't know how much she bought, but she's got a big smile. Here's just the interior of our storefront. It's roughly 2,000 square feet. So what we did is studied some of the looks and designs in the United States and said we got to make it modern. So it's something you'd see in downtown Toronto. You see this in our First Nation in northern Manitoba on the Opaskwayak Cree Nation. Here in Long Plain, with their grand opening, both in Winnipeg and in Portage La Prairie, attending it in the middle of a snowstorm. That's not confetti. And then the Chief Dennis Michis are in the buckskin doing the grand opening at his locations. This is their location. If you notice the address, 420 Madison. And that's right in the heart of Winnipeg, right near one of the biggest shopping centers in Polo Park. And they actually have one of the largest gas station sales by volumes already right beside our location there. So we sell gas and grass. So the investments in Meta Growth highlights, as I mentioned earlier, we invested $3 million to purchase 12 million shares. They opened up at 25 cents and it went up to as high as $1.32. We sold some of our shares and paid off our original investment in a matter of 9 months. Because of the success of winning those master licenses, I forgot to mention when the province did that, 2 of the 4 master licenses were won by First Nation inclusion. So Opaskwayak being one went in partnership with Meta, the other one was Fisher River Cree Nation with a company out of the U.S., and I can't remember their name, they do terrible marketing. That's my joke. I forgot, something Gardens, Variety Gardens I think they're called. So it's nice to see that 2 of the 4 master licenses were won by First Nations. So we played the game differently compared to pushing the sovereign issue. And yet the end result is the same. We're generating revenues and flowing it back to our community. So when we started winning more licenses in Alberta, and you'll see that the company required a cash infusion of roughly $35 million. So we said, we'll give you $35 million. This is where FNFA came in. Our borrowing capacity there is $56 million. So we borrowed $25 million. We made $1.7 million in less than 4 months, a 20% return. Plus we had some loan fees negotiated in there. So we've done very well using our borrowing capacity from the First Nations Financial Authority very strategically. Again, just recently we've loaned them $9 million as we're looking at expanding into other provinces. And we basically make $100,000 a month on interest and loan fees from them. So we just gave them an extension on that one for 3 years. And we're looking at giving them another additional $11 million, which will generate $2.5 million a year for us net profit, and then get that money paid back within 3 years guaranteed. So you take that, and what we do is put all that money, as I said earlier, into language revitalization, infrastructure, housing, vehicles, etc. for the First Nation. So with the $9 million debt financing, which we just approved a few weeks ago at 10% paid monthly and an annual administration fee of $225,000, we're actually going to increase that and basically double that. Timeline, I don't know if you guys can see it back here, but it gives you a history back in August 30th, 2017. That's when we made the original investment. December 15th, we signed the limited partnership agreements with the other First Nations. January, I got officially appointed on the board as part of the requirement for the investment to get a seat on the board. And then February 16th, we won one of the 4 master licenses in Manitoba. May 15th, we launched a premium brands location from National Access Cannabis, which was at the time a medical facility or medical storefront. We did that strategically because they were already established. It was our way of getting a beachhead into the industry, knowing that we were going to convert that to retail, which we did, and then we had to lobby and make sure we had a strong proposal submitted to the government of Manitoba. I think there were 120 submissions, and they only picked 4, so it tells you how sharp we had to be. July 20th, we loaned $25 million to the company, and with that loan, we basically made $3.5 million in less than 4 months net return. November 9th last year, we opened up the first Meta store, a legal store on a First Nation in Canada. And then November 21st, NAC became Canada's largest private recreational cannabis retailer with 17 stores at the time. November 27th last year, we did a private placement of $26 million with $1.7 million interest plus loan fees. And then we just gave them a $9 million loan last year, which we extended again this year. And then we're increasing that. January 10th of this year, we achieved $10 million in sales, gross margin of 32%. March 7th, 3 months later, we actually achieved $20 million in gross sales with 23 stores. April 12th, $16.2 million in a matter of a month. May 30th, we converted the $9 million loan to an open line of credit. And keep in mind, we're learning this as we go. We didn't do any of this stuff, and we're still learning as we're going as a First Nation. Fortunately, First Nations Financial Authority, the Financial Management Board, has been moving with us and basically having to rewrite their policy because they never, I don't think, expected a First Nation to do what we're doing with these funds that we're borrowing. So June 24th, NAC announces over 40 million retail sales since October 17th. July 29th, we had 34 licensed retail stores across Canada. July 30th, 17 million in revenue in the third quarter. So you can see it's rising every 3 months. October 15th, we did over 60 million in sales in 1 year of operation with the 33 stores. November 1st, National Access Cannabis Corp announces the business name change, which we are now known as Meta Growth. And then we just sold off the medical division now because that was really our strategy to use that to launch into retail. So Meta Growth extends the maturity date of $9 million for OCN loan to December 31st, 2022. So that's our history in roughly under 2 years, more or less. So you can see how fast the industry is changing, how rapidly it's growing. So when governments, provincial governments say, oh, we're figuring this out, the reality is the markets are going to be saturated if you don't get in there sooner rather than later. So we didn't wait for government or anyone to tell us the rules. We just got into it and figured out how to play the game by going through the publicly traded companies route. So the company overview itself, maintaining our leadership position with significant near-term growth. 17 million in retail this last quarter. We had 24 stores last quarter. Today we have 33 stores. And we're estimating 95 stores by the end of 2020 next year with the big move into the province of Ontario. Ontario is saying that they're now going to open it up and try to open 40 stores per month starting in January. So we want to get at least 40 of those stores in the first year, then ultimately another 35, 40 the following year. Cannabis, here's our footprint right now as it stands. In BC, we have 7 licenses submitted waiting for approval. So under the Meta brand name, we'll have 70 stores positioned. Who's here from Alberta? Any Albertans? One? None? I guess they're all, oh, one way back there, okay. I guess they're too busy smoking their herb there. Just kidding. New Leaf Cannabis, actually, we bought out that whole company, that whole branch, so we actually own 25 retail locations. We're actually in a position to bump that up to 40 in the next little while. So when we approached some First Nations in Alberta, they were saying they're going to do their own things. And out of respect and courtesy, we said, well, we're going to be coming in using a different model. If you work with us, great. If not, we'll compete in a healthy environment. So we'll have 20, 35, we'll have 40, we'll have potentially 52 stores in Alberta. at the rate we're going. And as well, you see in the map there, Second Cup Coffee Company, we have a strategic partnership with them where a large number of their coffee operations are going to be converted to cannabis retail locations. We have one in Saskatchewan in Moose Jaw. We have 9 operating right now in Manitoba, and we'll have up to 14 to open up before the end of the year. And then this year, by 2020, we're planning on opening at least 35 in the province of Ontario. In New Brunswick, because their province didn't succeed on their provincially owned retail operation, they're now putting out an RFP for private operators to come in. So we've submitted a RFP to take over their operations if we're successful. So we know retail. A lot of our staff come from these organizations, these companies, all these brands that you see here. So we have a very top-notch management company. 35 licensed stores right now, operating in 3 provinces with over 60,000 square feet of combined retail space, 800 plus SKUs and growing, over 1.5 million transactions to date. And the average purchase value for our customers is $40. So 17 million quarterly retail revenue the recent quarter, 60 million over the first year, and over 350 employees, with about 40 being First Nation employees. Whoops. So the future of the industry, long-term market share belongs to the brands. So when you look, for those of you that have gone to the United States and we've done our research there, it's all going to come down to the branding, the look and feel of the brand you have, and of course the genetics. Brands are established from distribution and creation of the goodwill. Advertising and marketing are restricted and will be. So you can only advertise in age-gated environments, so within the stores themselves, more or less. And retail is going to be the future of the brand and therefore the market share. So as we said and learned very quickly 2 years ago, the retailer is going to be the kingmaker or the gatekeeper that'll determine which products they buy the genetics and get on their shelf. So we learned that very quickly, and that's really the reality, because if you're on the licensed producer side, it's a race to the bottom. And why I say that is because there's so much competition out there, it's going to come down to cost per gram. So you really got to sharpen that pencil and streamline your operations to get that cost per gram down as low as you can in order to make it competitive with the LPs, but the retailer will determine the pricing at the end of the day. New store, new design. So we're rolling out now with an optimized experience for our customers. So the new stores will be planned for Alberta, British Columbia, and Ontario. So this is, call it Meta 2.0. So looking at the research of the different competitors we have in Canada as well as in the US, we're now going to revamp, and this will be the new look and feel. So you guys are seeing this for the first time of our new branding coming out. Metis Cannabis Company, the new brand design is beyond and within, one of our slogans, and the texture and multi-dimensional art. If you look at it, that's the design of all of our artwork and marketing and promotion that we'll be rolling out. Turnkey retail business for First Nation partners that are thinking about getting into it, because we still come across folks saying, how do we get into it? Where do we even begin? So what you would get working with us is a complete turnkey retail business to serve markets with populations of at least 5,000 or more, generating profit from the most important part of the cannabis value chain, which is retail, serving the community with regulated legal cannabis, and partnering with an industry leader not only in Canada but potentially in the world, and partnering with the community. Just talking with my CEO there, who unfortunately wasn't able to make it, Mark Gallagher, what he had said and what I had asked him was, okay, within what cost would this be? So if you have $600,000, this would give you a turnkey operation plus at least $200,000 in inventory to hit the ground running. That's what it would cost you. With this particular model, we would only charge you 5% management fee to get you going and operational. That's another way of looking at it and getting into the business without learning all the pitfalls that we did. So you get full meta branding, site selection to maximize your customer experience, design and architectural drawing management, construction management, fixtures, hardware, software provided and installed, security software and POS, all proven, recruitment, training, and ongoing HR management, inventory purchasing and category management, payroll management, bookkeeping, accounting and reporting, and compliance management. So we've basically wrote our own franchise model here. Investing alongside with the Opaskwayak Cree Nation, we are the largest shareholder in Meta. We've loaned $9 million. We're actually going to be looking at investing another $11 million right away, borrowing from FNFA at 2.75% and loaning it to them at 12.5% in this case. So we see the investment in Meta as a growth opportunity for them and for Opaskwayak Cree Nation. The income, as I said earlier, is used to basically build infrastructure, housing, heavy equipment, buses, repairing our roads, etc., etc. So we're doing a lot of that already. So Meta is seeking additional investment from First Nations to invest alongside OCN. And right now, as was stated earlier by the financial gurus, there was a bit of a bloodbath in the markets where all the prices went down with cannabis companies across the board. But as Warren Buffett said, when investors are running out, that's the time to run in because the price is low and cannabis is not going anywhere. If anything, it's going to be growing by a few more billions of dollars in the coming years. So there's a lot of room for improvement. It's no different than the tech boom and bust where everybody got into it. All the strong companies survived, there was only a few. All the other ones fell out of the way, and the ones that you see today thriving, like the Apples, the Facebooks, etc., that's where Meta will be as it relates to cannabis on the retail side going forward. So there is a lot of room for improvement, and ultimately our goal is to expand internationally as well. So now when you see Opaskwayak strategy, we're on the retail side, which is the most profitable part of the supply chain of cannabis. We're on the financial side with Trichome Financial. And what Trichome does for us, being a major shareholder there, is we're able to actually have an investment in one central location that then allows us to go into LP side, whether it's indoor, outdoor, technology, retail, and the list goes on. We covered a whole gamut through that strategic investment. We just announced on the news that we're going out of the Toronto Stock Exchange venture and now into the Canadian Stock Exchange that will allow us to invest nationally and internationally. So now we'll be a small fish in a very big pond on a global scale. So that's Meta growth in a nutshell. So thank you very much for your time. Are there any questions? I can't see, and now I know why Frank Bush's moose are always shot, have bullet holes in his hooves of his moose, because he's like this. For those that hunt with spotlights.
Chief Sinclair, I just want to make one comment. What's interesting is that your community is a 10% owner in a large publicly traded company. And a lot of the times in First Nations economic development, there's a theme around owning and controlling and the importance around that. And I think this is just a really interesting counterpoint where there's such an incredible opportunity for your community, and it's technically a minority share.
Well, minority share, if you looked at it in the broad sense of the percentage, but 10% makes us a majority shareholder. So we could have 100% of a store, and that was part of the logic that we considered is we can own 100% of one store on the Opaskwayak Cree Nation, which would generate maybe $500,000 a year, or we can own 10% of 200 retail operations that'll give us multi-millions of dollars on the retail side, plus the share price, plus the employment, plus the retail that we're investing, that we're generating. So we're paying ourselves 3-4 times in some cases. So 10%, if you look at the value of that, and what I've told my people, don't get stuck on the percentage piece. Convert that to dollars, and what does that dollar amount convert to? So that's multi-millions of dollars for us annually. Thank you. That's a great question. That's why you're a lawyer. You're smart. Yes, sir.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm just wondering about the two things. Stores would be generating a lot of cash. So the first question is, any guidance for other retailers in the audience about how to handle all that cash? And then the second question would be...
Let me answer the first question. Okay. Like a good Indian chief, you spend it as fast as you make it. No, just kidding. No, the first one, what we do is, I guess, to clarify, we basically have a relationship with the bank, and because we're publicly traded, we meet all those criteria. So we're able to bank our money, and we had to establish that because the banks were still a little weary even when it became legal. So we're able to put our monies in the bank. That's not a problem at all. But just on that note, and it was interesting when I came across, when I first started presenting about a year and a half ago, people were saying, well, what are you going to do with all that money as a chief and council? You're going to spend it on yourselves? I was like, what? What are you talking about? What we have is we, in the Opaskwayak Cree Nation, as I said, we have a strategic plan that we're planning over 100 years. We also have a comprehensive community plan that's feeding into that. And then because we're certified First Nations Financial Authority, Financial Management Board, we're part of the 10-year grant funding. We have a treasury board and we're creating a sovereign wealth fund. And then we have a treasury board within the Opaskwayak Cree Nation. So everything is accounted for right to the penny. Everything is reviewed by the respective branch that needs those dollars. It's presented to our treasury board. The treasury board then makes a recommendation to the Onegin Oneshigawak or the chief and council, and we'll review the recommendation, tweak it if need be, but 99.9% of the time we approve their recommendations. So because we're part of the financial administration law as well, everything is checked and balanced a number of times before we give the final approval. And ultimately, it's based on what the people want, not what management want or what leadership wants. It's grassroots driven.
Thank you, Chief. Second question is, do any of your individual stores have trouble establishing a banking relationship?
None at all, because it's all part of the franchise model, if you will, under Meta. It's all well established with all of our financial institutions, so no problem at all, and because we're publicly traded.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I do know that why you're asking that question is for the ones that operate in the gray area, if you will, or the sovereign First Nations, because they're not legally registered or under the legal framework, they're basically stockpiling that cash and have to basically utilize it however they can. So when I mentioned us competing First Nation earlier with the chief, I asked him what he does. So they basically take their cash and they're buying supplies or investing in their infrastructure, whatever, they're spending it in the way that the community needs it because they can't bank it. So,
thank you so much.
Thank you, Indigenous Sinclair.
So I'll be sitting over there if anybody wants my number, because we're going to look for some more strategic investors, and now's the time to get in for those that want to get in, that don't want to put a retail operation on their First Nation land, but want to benefit financially from it and still see the fruits of your labor. Hey, go say the